The planet Vega 7 was not beautiful. It had brown dirt, thin air, and a sky that always looked like it was about to rain but never did. But for 3,000 humans, it was home. They had left Earth 15 years ago on a colony ship, looking for a new place to live. They found Vega 7, and they made it work. The humans built small houses from local stone. They grew crops in greenhouses because the soil outside was not good enough. They raised animals they had brought from Earth. Life was hard, but it was peaceful. No wars, no pollution. Just honest work and quiet nights under alien stars. David Park was one of the first colonists. He was an agricultural engineer, which meant he helped people grow food. He was a quiet man with kind eyes and rough hands from years of working in the dirt. His wife, Grace Kim, was a medical officer. She took care of sick people and delivered babies. Together, they had built a good life on Vega 7, but their greatest joy was their daughter, Lily. Lily Park was 8 years old. She had black hair that she wore in 2 braids, and she was missing one front tooth. She liked to run through the greenhouse tunnels and play with the colony's children. She was curious about everything and afraid of nothing. Before the colony ship left Earth, Lily's grandfather gave her a gift. It was a honey badger. The animal was not like normal honey badgers. Scientists had changed its genes to make it smarter, healthier, and able to live longer. They had also done something strange to its voice. The honey badger could not make any sound. No growls. No hisses. Nothing. It was completely silent. Lily named him Biscuit. Biscuit was small, about the size of a house cat. He had coarse black and white fur, small round ears, and eyes like 2 pieces of dark glass. He followed Lily everywhere. When she slept, he slept at the foot of her bed. When she ate, he sat beside her chair. When she played, he watched from nearby, always alert, always quiet. The other colonists thought Biscuit was cute. Some of the children were scared of him because of his sharp claws and strange silence. But everyone agreed he was harmless. Just a little girl's pet. They were very wrong. On a Tuesday morning, the sky above Vega 7 changed. A shadow fell across the colony. People looked up and saw something that made their blood run cold. Ships. Hundreds of ships. They blocked out the pale sun and hung in the air like metal mountains. The ships belonged to the Dominion of the Eternal Throne that every human in the galaxy knew about the Dominion. They were an empire that controlled 40 star systems. They had conquered dozens of species. They were ruled by beings called the Vrel, tall reptilian creatures with scales like black glass and eyes that glowed with cold intelligence. The Dominion did not negotiate. They did not trade. They took what they wanted, and now they wanted Vega-7. The first Dominion ship landed outside the colony. Its doors opened, and soldiers marched out in perfect lines. They were 7 feet tall, covered in armor, and carried weapons that hummed with energy. Behind them came their commander. Commander Vrel was even taller than his soldiers. His scales were darker, his eyes brighter. He had conquered 11 worlds personally. He had never lost a battle. He looked at the small human colony the way a person might look at an insect. "Humans of Vega 7, he announced, his voice booming through speakers. "You are now property of the Eternal Throne. You will submit to processing. You will be assigned roles in service of the Dominion. Resistance is not brave. Resistance is extinction. Choose wisely." The colonists did not resist. How could they? They had no weapons, no army, no warships. They were farmers and doctors and engineers. They had come to Vega 7 to escape conflict, not to fight. David Park held his wife's hand as Dominion soldiers herded them toward the colony's central square. Grace Kim held Lily close, whispering that everything would be okay. Lily clutched Biscuit to her chest, her small arms wrapped tight around his silent body. The processing began immediately. Soldiers separated people into groups. Strong adults in one area, elderly in another, and children. The children were taken somewhere else. For evaluation, a soldier explained. Though his voice made clear, he did not care if the humans understood. David tried to protest when they reached for Lily. A soldier hit him across the face with the back of a clawed hand. He fell to the ground, blood running from his nose. "David!" Grace screamed, but soldiers held her back. Lily was lifted by rough hands. She did not cry. She did not scream. She just held Biscuit tighter. "Mama," she said quietly. "It's okay. Biscuit is with me." Grace did not understand why those words made her feel both terrified and strangely calm. The soldiers carried Lily toward a transport vehicle. Other children were already inside, crying and calling for their parents. Lily was placed among them. She sat quietly, Biscuit in her lap, her dark eyes watching the soldiers. One soldier looked at the animal in her arms. He had never seen a creature like it before. It was small and seemed harmless, but something about its stillness bothered him. It was watching him with those black eyes, completely motionless, completely silent. "Ugly pet," the soldier said, reaching down to take it from her. Perhaps he would throw it away. Perhaps he would kill it for amusement. These humans and their attachment to weak creatures disgusted him. His clawed hand closed around Biscuit's body for one heartbeat. Nothing happened. Then the honey badger moved. It happened so fast that no one truly saw it. There was no warning, no sound. One moment the soldier was reaching down, and the next moment he was screaming, the only one making any noise at all as blood sprayed from where his fingers used to be. Biscuit had not made a single sound, but he had just started. In the transport vehicle, surrounded by crying children, with Dominion soldiers all around and warships filling the sky. A small honey badger began to teach an alien empire the true meaning of fear, and little Lily Park just sat there, watching, still holding the space where Biscuit had been, knowing somehow that her friend was doing what he had always been born to do, protecting her. No matter what. The first soldier fell before anyone understood what was happening. His name was Kroth, and he had served the Dominion for 60 years. He had fought in wars across the galaxy. He had killed creatures 10 times his size. He had never known fear. Now he was on his knees, staring at his hand, watching purple blood pour from the stumps where 3 of his fingers used to be. The pain had not even hit him yet. His brain could not process what had just happened. A small animal, no bigger than a human child's toy, had just crippled him in less than 1 second. The other soldiers in the transport vehicle turned toward the sound of Krath's scream. They saw their fellow warrior on the ground. They saw the blood. They saw the children backing away in terror, and they saw the honey badger. Biscuit stood in the center of the vehicle, perfectly still. His black and white fur was already stained with purple blood. His small eyes reflected the overhead lights like 2 dark mirrors. He made no sound, no growl, no hiss, nothing at all. He was just waiting. "Kill it," Krath screamed, finally finding his voice. "Kill the creature." The second soldier was named Voss. He was younger than Krath, faster too. He had excellent reflexes, trained through decades of combat. He raised his plasma rifle and aimed at the small animal. He never got to fire. Biscuit moved like water flowing downhill. One moment he was standing still. The next he was on Voss, climbing up his armored body faster than the eye could follow. Voss tried to shake him off, but the honey badger's claws found the gaps in his armor, the soft places at the joints where scales met scales. Voss felt a sharp pain at his throat, then a warm wetness running down his chest. Then nothing at all. He collapsed, and Biscuit was already moving toward the third soldier. This one was named Thrall, and he was the smartest of the 3. He did not try to shoot the creature. He did not try to grab it. He simply ran. He almost made it to the vehicle's door. Biscuit caught him from behind, climbing up his back in a heartbeat. Thrall felt small claws digging into the base of his skull, finding the gap between his helmet and his neck armor. He had just enough time to feel afraid before the darkness took him. 3 elite Dominion soldiers. 6 seconds. 1 small, silent animal. The children in the transport vehicle were screaming now, pressing themselves against the walls, trying to get as far from the blood as possible. But Lily Park sat perfectly still in her seat. She watched Biscuit finish his work with calm, dark eyes. When the honey badger was done, he walked back to Lily. He climbed into her lap, his fur wet and sticky with purple alien blood. He curled up against her chest, and she wrapped her arms around him. Still, he made no sound. "Good boy," Lily whispered, and she meant it. Outside the vehicle, other soldiers had heard the screaming. They rushed to the transport, weapons ready, expecting to find human resistance. Instead, they found 3 dead warriors and a small human girl, holding a blood-soaked animal. They did not know what to do. Word spread quickly through the Dominion ranks. Commander Vrel heard the report within minutes. He was standing in the colony's central square, overseeing the processing of adult humans, when a junior officer approached him with a trembling voice. "Commander, there has been an incident." Vrel listened to the report. His face showed no emotion, but his claws dug slowly into the arms of his command chair. When the officer finished speaking, Vrel stood up. "Show me," he said. They took him to the transport vehicle. The bodies had not been moved. Vrel stood in the doorway and looked at his fallen soldiers. He had seen death many times. He had caused more death than he could count. But this was different. Krath, Voss, and Thrall were not weak soldiers. They were veterans. They had fought and killed for the Dominion their entire lives. And they had been destroyed by something that weighed less than a human infant. Vrel looked at the small girl sitting in the corner of the vehicle. She looked back at him without fear. The creature in her arms was watching him too, its dark eyes reflecting his own face back at him. "Bring me the security footage," Vrel ordered. They brought a portable display, screen, and played the recording from the transport vehicle's internal cameras. Vrel watched it once, then twice, then 17 times. Each time, he focused on different details. The speed of the creature, the precision of its attacks, the way it found the weak points in Dominion armor without hesitation, the complete absence of fear in its movements. Most creatures, when faced with a larger enemy, showed some sign of hesitation, a moment of doubt, a survival instinct telling them to run away. Even the bravest warriors in the galaxy had a small voice in their heads that whispered danger. This creature had nothing. No fear, no doubt, no hesitation. It had simply decided to kill, and it had killed. "What is this thing?" Vrel asked quietly. His science officer stepped forward. "Our databases have limited information, Commander. The creature is called a honey badger. It is from the human homeworld, Earth. It is a common animal there." "Common?" Vrel repeated. "Yes, Commander. They live in the wild. Humans also keep them as pets." Vrel looked at the frozen image on the screen. The honey badger mid-leap, claws extended, eyes empty of everything except purpose. "The humans keep these things as pets," he said slowly. "They give them to their children. It appears so, Commander." Vrel had conquered 11 worlds. He had faced armies of millions. He had never felt what he felt now, looking at this small, silent creature. It was not quite fear. Beings like Vrel did not feel fear in the way lesser creatures did. But it was something close. It was the recognition that he had encountered something truly dangerous. Something that did not follow the normal rules of the universe. He looked at the little human girl again. She was still sitting calmly, still holding the creature. She did not look like a threat. She looked like what she was, a child. But the thing in her arms had just killed 3 of his best soldiers without making a single sound. "Commander," his officer asked, "what are your orders?" Vrel was silent for a long moment. He was thinking about what this meant. Not just for this colony, but for the Dominion's entire relationship with humanity. If this creature was common on Earth, then how many of them existed? Hundreds? Thousands? Millions? And if the humans had genetically modified this one to be smarter and more loyal, what else had they done to it? What other modifications existed? What other monsters were the humans hiding? Halt all processing, Vrel ordered finally. No one touches the human children until I give further orders. And bring me everything our databases have on this species. He looked one more time at the honey badger on the girl's lap. It looked back at him with those empty, dark eyes. For the first time in 200 years, Commander Vrel of the Dominion of the Eternal Throne was not certain he was the most dangerous thing in the room. Commander Vrel spent the next 12 hours in his private chambers aboard the command ship. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He simply read. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of species across the galaxy. They had detailed files on every creature they had ever encountered. They knew which ones were dangerous, which ones were useful, and which ones were worthless. This information was power, and the Dominion had used it to build an empire. But their files on Earth animals were limited. Humans were a young species, only recently entering the galactic stage. The Dominion had not yet studied them carefully. They had assumed humans were weak, soft, easy to control. Now Vrel was learning how wrong that assumption was. He started with the basic biology of the honey badger. The creature was small, usually weighing between 9 and 16 kilograms. It had thick, loose skin that was difficult to pierce. Its claws were long and sharp, designed for digging but equally effective for fighting. Its jaws were powerful enough to crack bone. But these physical features were not what made Vrel uneasy. Many creatures in the galaxy were strong, or fast, or had sharp claws. What made the honey badger different was its brain. The creature had no fear response. Vrel read this fact 3 times to make sure he understood it. In most animals, fear was a survival mechanism. When faced with a larger predator, the brain would release chemicals that triggered a fight-or-flight response. The animal would either run away or freeze, trying to survive. Honey badgers had evolved differently. Somewhere in their evolutionary history, fear had stopped being useful. These creatures lived in a harsh environment where running away often meant death anyway. So their brains had simply stopped producing the chemicals that caused fear. They were not brave. Bravery meant feeling fear and acting despite it. Honey badgers did not feel fear at all. They simply could not. Vrel found videos from Earth's old internet archives. He watched a honey badger fight a lion. The lion was 10 times the badger's size, with claws that could cut through steel. The honey badger attacked anyway, biting and scratching until the lion retreated. He watched a honey badger eat a venomous snake. The snake bit the badger multiple times. The badger collapsed, appearing to die. Then, 30 minutes later, it woke up and continued eating the snake. Its body had developed resistance to poison. He watched a honey badger escape from an enclosure designed by human scientists. The enclosure had walls, locks, and barriers that should have been impossible for such a small creature to overcome. The badger figured it out anyway, using tools, climbing techniques, and problem-solving skills that surprised even the humans studying it. These creatures were not just fearless. They were intelligent. They were persistent. They never gave up. Vrel put down his reading device and sat in silence for a long time. His door chimed. It was his science officer, a thin reptilian named Kess, who specialized in xenobiology, the study of alien life forms. You summoned me, Commander? Tell me about the modifications, Vrel said. The humans changed this creature. What did they do to it? Kes accessed her datapad and began reading. The honey badger belonging to the human child has been genetically modified in several ways. First, its intelligence has been enhanced. It can understand complex commands and make decisions based on changing situations. Second, its lifespan has been extended. Natural honey badgers live approximately 24 years. This one could live twice that long. Third, its vocal cords have been removed. It cannot make any sound. Why would they remove its voice? Vrel asked. Kes hesitated. We are not certain, Commander. Perhaps for hunting purposes. A silent predator is more effective than one that makes noise. Vrel thought about this. The humans had taken a creature that was already fearless and dangerous, and they had made it smarter, longer-lived, and completely silent. What kind of species did such things? There is one more modification, Kes continued. The creature has been imprinted on the human child. This is a biological bond that cannot be broken. The honey badger sees the child as its pack, its family. It will protect her until death. It will not eat or sleep properly if separated from her. It exists in a very real sense only for her. So the creature will fight for the child no matter what, Vrel said slowly. Yes, Commander. No matter the odds. No matter the enemy. It will fight until its heart stops beating, and possibly even after that. Honey badgers have been documented continuing to fight even with fatal injuries, as if their bodies do not understand they are already dead. Vrel stood up and walked to his window. Outside, the brown surface of Vega 7 stretched to the horizon. Somewhere down there, a small human girl was sitting with a blood-soaked animal in her lap, waiting to see what would happen next. How many of these creatures exist among humans? Vrel asked. Unknown, Commander. But our intelligence suggests they are common pets on Earth and in human colonies. They are popular with families. With children. Vrel closed his eyes. Families. Children. The most vulnerable members of human society were being protected by creatures that did not understand the concept of surrender. Creatures that would fight lions and eat venomous snakes and escape from any prison. Creatures that felt no fear, and the humans had made them smarter. Vrel had built his career on understanding his enemies. He knew how to find their weaknesses, how to exploit their fears, how to break their will to fight. But how did you break the will of something that had no will to break? How did you frighten something that could not feel fear? Commander, Kes said carefully, there is something else you should know. What? The soldiers who witnessed the attack. They are talking. The story is spreading through the ranks. Our warriors are unsettled. Of course they were. Vrel's soldiers were elite fighters, proud of their strength and skill. They had just learned that a creature the size of a food animal had killed 3 of their brothers in 6 seconds. Without making a sound, fear was contagious. Vrel knew this well. He had used it as a weapon many times. Now it was being used against him. There is also the matter of the other humans, Kes continued. They saw what happened. They know their children are being protected by these creatures. Some of them have started smiling. Vrel turned around sharply. Smiling? Yes, Commander. Despite being prisoners, despite facing processing, despite having no weapons or ships, they are smiling, as if they know something we do not. Vrel thought about this for a long moment. The humans had seemed weak when the Dominion arrived, soft, easy to conquer. But perhaps that had been a mistake. Perhaps the humans had never been weak at all. Perhaps they had simply been waiting. Summon the High Council, Vrel ordered. Quantum Link, highest priority. We need to discuss the future of human relations. All 12 council members, Commander. All 12. This is not a decision I can make alone. Cass bowed and left to make the arrangements. Vrel turned back to the window. He thought about the little human girl and her silent guardian. He thought about the files he had read, the videos he had watched, the reports from his frightened soldiers. The Dominion had conquered 40 star systems. They had crushed rebellions and destroyed worlds. They had never met an enemy they could not defeat. But they had also never met humans before, and they had certainly never met honey badgers. For the first time in his long life, Commander Vrel was not sure what to do next. And that uncertainty, that tiny seed of doubt, was perhaps the most frightening thing of all. The High Council of the Dominion met via quantum link, their holographic images appearing in Vrel's command chamber. 12 supreme rulers, each controlling multiple star systems, each responsible for billions of lives. They had not gathered like this in over 50 years. The last time had been to discuss the destruction of an entire species. Vrel stood at attention as the council members materialized around him. There was Councillor Thren, the eldest among them, whose scales had faded to gray with age, but whose mind remained sharp as a blade. There was Councillor Vess, who controlled the military forces of the outer territories. There was Councillor Mrak, known as the Butcher, who had personally overseen the extinction of 3 species that dared to resist the Dominion. All 12 of them had received Vrel's report. All 12 had watched the footage from the transport vehicle. And all 12 were silent, waiting. Commander Vrel, Councillor Thren spoke first, his voice like stones grinding together. You have called this council to discuss a single human child and her pet. Explain why this requires our attention. Vrel had prepared for this question. He activated a holographic display, showing the footage of Biscuit's attack. The council watched as 3 elite soldiers were killed in 6 seconds. This is not about one child, Vrel said. This is about what this child represents. The creature that killed our soldiers is called a honey badger. Humans consider it a common pet. They give them to their children. They are found throughout human space. Then we kill all of them, Councillor Mrak said simply. Exterminate the species. Problem solved. With respect, Councillor, that may not be possible. These creatures exist on Earth, on human colonies, on human ships. We would need to invade all of human space simultaneously to prevent them from hiding the animals. And even then, humans are clever. They would find ways to preserve the species. Then what do you suggest? Councillor Vess asked. We cannot simply ignore what happened. Our soldiers are already talking. The story will spread. The story has already spread, Vrel admitted. Our warriors are unsettled. Some are afraid. They have never faced something that shows no fear, no hesitation, no survival instinct. They do not know how to fight an enemy like that. The council members exchanged glances. Fear among Dominion soldiers was extremely rare. Fear that spread was even rarer. This was a problem that could affect their entire military structure. There is another concern, Vrel continued. The humans know what happened. They saw their children being protected by these creatures. They are no longer afraid of us. Some of them have started to hope. Hope was dangerous. The Dominion had learned this over centuries of conquest. Crushing hope was often more important than crushing armies. An enemy without hope would surrender. An enemy with hope would fight until death. What are our options? Councillor Thren asked. Councillor Mrak spoke first. We kill the child and the creature. We make an example of them. We show our strength, and if there are more creatures? Vrel responded. If we kill this one and another appears? If 10 appear? 100? Our soldiers will see that we cannot stop them. We will lose not just warriors, but the myth of our invincibility. Then we destroy the entire colony, Mrak said coldly. Burn Vega 7 from orbit. Let no one survive to tell the tale. The humans will know, Counselor Vess pointed out. They have communication networks. Word of our attack will reach Earth within hours. They will ask what happened. They will investigate. And when they learn that we destroyed an entire colony because we were afraid of one small animal, she let the sentence hang in the air. The council was silent. Vrel could see them calculating, considering, weighing options. They were rulers of an empire, and they understood that power was not just about strength. It was about perception. If the galaxy learned that the Dominion had burned a colony to avoid facing honey badgers, their reputation would suffer a blow from which they might never recover. There is one other option, Vrel said carefully. It is not ideal, but it may be the least damaging path forward. Speak. Councilor Thren ordered. We marked the child as untouchable. The council chamber went very still. Untouchable was a designation that had been used only 17 times in the entire history of the Dominion. It was reserved for being so dangerous, so impossible to safely approach, that contact itself was forbidden. The last being marked untouchable had been a creature that fed on neural energy. Simply being near it caused brain death. You want to give this designation to a human child? Counselor Mrak sounded almost amused. A girl of 8 years? Not to the child, Ralph said. To what protects her? The designation will tell our forces that approaching this human is forbidden. It will explain the deaths of our soldiers as the result of encountering an untouchable rather than being killed by a small pet. It preserves our dignity while keeping our warriors safe. It also means we cannot touch the child, Counselor Vess said. Or her parents. Or anyone near her. We lose the entire colony. We lose one colony of 3,000 humans, Rel agreed. But we keep our reputation. We keep our soldiers' morale. And we avoid a potentially devastating war with humanity before we are ready. Before we are ready? Counselor Thren leaned forward. You believe we will eventually face war with humans? Vrel thought about the files he had read, the videos he had watched, the history of a species that kept fearless predators as children's pets. I believe, he said slowly, that humans are not what we thought they were. I believe we need more time to study them, to understand them, before we attempt full conquest. This colony was supposed to be easy, a test. Instead, we have learned that we know almost nothing about these creatures. The council debated for 6 more hours. Counselor Mrak argued for destruction until the very end. Others were more cautious. In the end, it came down to a simple calculation. Which option was least likely to damage the Dominion's power? When the vote was taken, it was 9-3 in favor of the untouchable designation. The official decree was broadcast to every Dominion vessel, every outpost, every soldier in the Empire. A holographic image of Lily Park was attached, along with an image of Biscuit. By order of the Eternal Throne, the message read, the human child designated Lily Park, and all in her proximity are marked untouchable. This designation is granted in recognition of existential threat level. Any Dominion citizen who approaches within 50 meters of this human faces immediate execution. This decree is permanent and irrevocable. On Vega 7, David Park and Grace Kim were released from the processing center. They found their daughter sitting in the same transport vehicle where the attack had happened, still holding her blood-stained honey badger. Dominion soldiers watched them from a distance, but no one came near. Mama, Lily said when she saw her parents. Biscuit was very good. He kept the bad ones away. Grace fell to her knees and hugged her daughter, tears streaming down her face. David stood behind them, looking at the Dominion soldiers who would not meet his eyes. He understood what had happened. He understood what it meant. His daughter, his 8-year-old daughter, had just been declared too dangerous to touch by an empire that controlled 40 star systems, all because of one small, silent honey badger. David looked down at Biscuit, curled up in Lily's arms. The creature looked back at him with those dark, empty eyes. For the first time since the Dominion ships had appeared in the sky, David Park smiled. News traveled fast in human space. Within days, every human colony knew what had happened on Vega 7. Within weeks, the story had reached Earth itself. And within months, everything had changed. The story spread through news networks, through personal messages, through whispered conversations in bars and offices. An 8-year-old girl, a silent honey badger, 3 dead alien soldiers, and an empire that had declared a child untouchable because they were afraid. At first, people did not believe it. The Dominion was supposed to be invincible. They had conquered 40 star systems. They had crushed species that made humans look like children. How could they be afraid of a honey badger? Then they saw the footage. Someone had leaked the security recording from the transport vehicle. It showed everything. The soldiers reaching for Lily, the honey badger moving like liquid death, the blood, the silence. People watched it once, twice, 100 times. They shared it with their friends and families. They talked about it at work and at dinner. And slowly, quietly, something changed in the human spirit. For years, humans had feared the Dominion. They had built their colonies on distant worlds, hoping to avoid notice. They had kept their heads down, their voices soft, their ambitions small. They had accepted that they were a young species in an old galaxy, that they were weak compared to the empires that surrounded them. Now they knew the truth. Dominion was afraid of them. Not of their weapons, not of their ships, not of their armies. The Dominion was afraid of the creatures that humans kept as pets. They were afraid of the animals that human children carried in their arms. If the Dominion feared honey badgers, what else might they fear? What else had humans brought from Earth that the galaxy was not ready for? Honey badger breeding programs appeared on every human colony. Genetic modification labs worked overtime to produce enhanced specimens, smarter, stronger, more loyal. Silent models became especially popular. On the colony world of New Boston, a Dominion trade delegation arrived to discuss resource agreements. They found human children waiting at the spaceport, each one holding a honey badger. The delegation returned to their ship and left without making contact. On the mining station Epsilon 4, Dominion soldiers attempted to arrest a human engineer for a minor violation. The engineer's honey badger was in his quarters at the time. The soldiers filed a report claiming the arrest was unnecessary and left the station within the hour. On Earth itself, the United Human Government established a new diplomatic protocol. Any meeting with Dominion representatives would include at least one honey badger in the room. The animals would sit quietly beside their human companions, watching the aliens with their dark, empty eyes. The Dominion diplomats learned to avoid looking at them. 1 year after the incident on Vega 7, a formal meeting was arranged between human and Dominion representatives. Ambassador Thomas Lee was chosen to lead the human delegation. He was a calm man with graying hair and a reputation for fair dealing. He was also the father of a 6-year-old girl named Emma. Emma came to the meeting with her father. So did her honey badger, a female named Sergeant. The Dominion ambassador was a being named Vress, cousin to Commander Vrel. Vress had been chosen specifically because he had never encountered honey badgers before. The council hoped this would make him less afraid. It did not work. Sergeant sat beside Emma's chair, perfectly still, perfectly silent. Vress could not stop looking at her. Every time the honey badger moved, even slightly, Vress flinched. "Your empire spans 40 systems," Thomas Lee said calmly, as if he did not notice the ambassador's discomfort. "You have conquered species that we cannot imagine. You have armies and weapons beyond our current technology. But you marked our children untouchable because of one small animal." Vress said nothing. What could he say? "We did not engineer honey badgers to be weapons," Thomas continued. We simply found creatures whose nature matched our own. Creatures who do not understand the concept of surrender, who fight beyond reason, beyond hope, beyond any logical calculation of survival. He leaned forward slightly. We come from a world where such creatures are common. We grew up among predators who would fight to the death over a meal. We lived beside animals that ate poison and attacked enemies 10 times their size. This is normal to us. This is home. Sergeant shifted on the floor, and Vress nearly knocked over his water glass. Perhaps now you understand, Thomas said, why humanity has never been conquered. The meeting ended shortly after. The Dominion agreed to reclassify all human colonies as protected territories. They agreed to withdraw their processing centers and release all humans taken for evaluation. They agreed to begin negotiations for a formal peace treaty. They did not agree because humans had threatened them. They did not agree because humans had weapons or ships or armies. They agreed because every time they looked at the small animal sitting beside the human child, they remembered the footage from Vega-7. They remembered what 6 seconds looked like. 23 years later, Lily Park was a grown woman of 31. She had lived her entire adult life as an untouchable, a designation that had become a badge of honor among humans. She had traveled to dozens of worlds, met with leaders and diplomats, and helped negotiate the treaties that brought humanity into the galactic community as equals. Through all of it, Biscuit had been at her side. The genetic modifications had given him a long life, but not an eternal one. On a quiet morning in autumn, in the small house that Lily had built on Vega-7, Biscuit closed his dark eyes and did not open them again. He was lying on her lap, just as he had been on that day in the transport vehicle so many years ago. The day that everything changed. Lily sat with him for a long time after he was gone. She did not cry. She had learned stillness from him, patience, the value of silence. She simply held him and remembered. She remembered his warmth, his weight, the way he watched the world with those empty dark eyes that saw everything and feared nothing. The way he had exploded into violence when she was threatened, and the way he had curled up peacefully in her arms when the danger was past. He had never made a sound. Not once in his entire life. But he had said more than any words could ever express. She buried him beneath a tree on the outskirts of the colony, in a spot where they used to sit together and watch the strange sunset of Vega-7. The human government offered a state funeral, a monument, a national day of remembrance. Lily refused all of it. She made a small gravestone herself, carved from local rock. She placed it over the grave and stood looking at it for a long time. The stone read simply, BCUI'd. He never made a sound he never had 2 years later. When humanity had spread across 100 star systems and the Dominion had become a distant memory, people would still tell the story. They would tell it to their children and their grandchildren, passing it down through generations. They would tell the story of a little girl and a silent honey badger. They would tell the story of how an empire learned fear. They would tell the story of why humanity had never been conquered, and never would be. And sometimes, late at night, when the stars were bright and the wind was still, you could almost imagine that you heard something moving in the darkness. Something small, something fearless, something that never made a sound, but never had to.